Yeah, my name's Philip Holt, and this is the Off Colony podcast. And my guest is Aaron Nagel.
Hello.
Why don't you start off by just telling those that don't know who you are, like who you are, where you're from, what you do, all
Yeah,
that.
my name's Aaron Nagel. I'm a figurative oil painter mostly from California, currently living in Portland, Oregon, as of like 2 years ago, I think this month. Um, yeah, known you for a long time.
Oh yeah, and so there's also this element of it where as I learn how to like interview people, I'm like I'm gonna end up asking you all these questions that you're like the answer to this.
Yeah, for sure.
Like where do you live? How long have you been there? Like I don't know. Um, yeah, how do you how have you adjusted to Portland to the move?
Portland's been very great. It's been no negative adjustment, with the exception of like burritos and Chinese food. Everything else is amazing, especially compared
Say that again with what?
burritos and Chinese food. It's not a
Right.
Chinese food town,
Okay.
and they don't really have the burrito thing figured out.
Okay.
Get a taco anywhere. Burritos are weird.
Weird.
Uh, Otherwise, fantastic.
Kind of. I mean, it's
Oakland,
kind of known for its cuisine. Yeah.
its
Like, isn't
cuisine is
there a
great.
lot of really good food?
Yeah, it's just really vegan friendly. I think
Yep.
that's it's been kind of its claim to fame the last couple years, is that it's up there with New York and LA as far as vegan stuff, and it's less annoying about it. The Bay Area is very like, it's super separate. You can't eat a vegan thing at a non-vegan place, and vice versa. And it's
Right.
probably just because of like 30 or 40 years of people being annoying about it in the Bay
Right.
Area. So now it's total backlash, and there's just weirdly not that much. So that part is great about Portland, but not having as much crime or property tax is also nice.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you grew up in California, born
yeah.
and raised.
Hmm.
Where?
In Berkeley, Oakland, like the East Bay.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
and then up until in 2013, I moved to LA for 3 years. But
okay.
aside from that, I lived in the East Bay my whole life,
Okay.
which I is a great it's a great place. But uh, these days, the cost of living there doesn't really uh, it's not really worth it anymore, in my opinion. Like, I think the Bay Area would be one of the top spots to live in the world if you were, if you made like $1 million a year. Like, if you could live in Pacific Heights in San Francisco and do all that, it's pretty. Um, but the it's just too much.
Yeah.
We were paying like just so much to live in a pretty not great neighborhood in Oakland with
No.
constant drama, and
And you had a cool spot.
we
I mean,
had
it
a
was a
cool
cool
spot.
house.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had a cool spot.
Huge
But it was
yard.
like,
Like yeah.
yeah, we had a cool spot. It was the first house I owned.
Yep.
But there were like, especially during the pandemic, it was like we were having, you know, every few months the cops would come and want to see our security cameras because some kind of thing went down, and people
Right.
getting carjacked on the street all the time. Gunshots almost every night, like, that you could hear, which we got totally used to. And then we moved to Portland. We were like, oh my god, that's
Right.
what's missing.
No gunshots.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
if money was no object, you go back to the Bay.
no, probably not.
Yeah.
Um, I
It's
still
not
love it.
recognizable anymore. Is it
You
just
know,
totally different from how you grew up?
yes, that's true. And
Yep.
and I'm sure that happens everywhere. Like, living in Portland, everybody here complains about how bad it is. All the people that are from Portland or have lived here for 20 years complain about how dangerous it is, and how bad the traffic is, and how expensive it is, and all this stuff that, like, we're just like, you're crazy. Like, this is amazing. Like,
Right.
the crime is not violent crime. It's like petty crime. And compared to the Bay Area, it costs nothing to live in super amazing neighborhoods.
Right.
So, yeah, I wouldn't. And Bay Area there's a lot of tension because of the gap between
Yeah.
people doing
Right.
well and the people doing poorly. Like, and that's like really palpable, especially when there's all the most of the people I knew in the Bay Area were probably making upwards of 200 grand a year, like at some tech company. They're not living like they make that much money. They're living like a normal middle class person because that's what it takes.
Right.
But then everybody who's not working for Twitter or Apple, whatever, are really having a hard time and pretty pissed about it. And everybody's on top of each other. Most other cities, you have your LA, you have your real nice area, and your real shitty area is super far from the nice area. San Francisco and the Bay Area, everything's stacked. So
Right.
like the poor people are just below you, and you're on top of them.
Right. Literally. Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of problems because of that. Yeah.
I remember having some of those, like, I don't know, almost like reactions when I moved from Chicago to San Jose,
Yeah.
where people in San Jose were like, "What? Like, you live on the east side? Like, that's like super gnarly. Like, there's tons of violence over there, and it's super sketchy." And it was like, man, not compared to Chicago. Like, and
Yeah.
and I'm not even complaining that Chicago is that bad, but just comparatively, like San Jose was. I mean, I remember when I first moved there, it was this weird. Like, I couldn't sleep because it was so quiet.
Yeah.
Like, whereas like living downtown Chicago, it's like there's just noise all the time, fire trucks and you know trash cans getting knocked over, and
Yeah.
I lived right next to like Wrigley Field, so it was just like bars. I mean, people are going crazy till 3, 4 in the morning, like
Yeah.
every single night. So you
Yeah.
move out to San Jose in like a bad neighborhood, and it's like crickets at 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people are like, man, that's like a super sketchy neighborhood, but they all live in like Los Gatos. And
Perspective
it's
is
like,
important. Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
probably like it more here because I have that perspective. So it's nice. Like I'm
yeah,
glad I did the time in all the other places because we've been in this house for 2 years and we'll still go on a walk and be like, I can't believe we live in this neighborhood. It's so nice.
right. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got your start creatively in
Yeah.
the Bay Area playing music. You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
your
Uh,
dad's a musician, yeah.
my dad's a jazz piano player. Yeah.
He's a professional musician, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And we
Yep.
grew up around music and started playing instruments really early. Um, so I mean, we started piano lessons at 6, and like we're
Mm,
forced to do it for I think at least 6 years, maybe 8 years.
okay.
And then I was playing trumpet in high school, and then kind of immediately got into bands. And I was in a band called Link 80 that ended up touring and kind of working professionally for like several years. Like maybe from 96 through 2002, we were like a working band and touring. By the end of it, we were touring 6 to 8 months out of the year. And
Okay.
we were all super young. Like I was, 15 when I joined that band, and then we were done by the time I was 22.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
and then started other music projects, but I started I was always an art person and started doing art stuff in between tours just for fun. Um, and then eventually started doing shirt designs and album covers and things for people in the music industry. And that's what kind of got me to like think kind of seriously about it.
Okay. So when you say art stuff, you mean like illustration?
I mean, I always was a drawer when I was a
Yeah.
little kid,
Okay.
but I didn't really paint seriously until my 20s in between tours.
Okay.
Um, and that was just because the art that I liked was big paintings. And so I was trying to do big paintings, and that was it. And it was super, I've never, even with music, my parents were very like, we lived in the Bay Area, realists about how you make a living as an art person and a musician. Like it was, by all means, do this, put all your focus to it, be prepared to supplement it with a real job. Like
Right.
that was always understood. Um, so there was like a realism. I never wanted to be a professional artist or musician because I just didn't think it was a possible thing,
Right.
which is not. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, even if it does work, it seems to usually end up being a short-lived run of success.
yeah, yeah, and
At
it's
least
not.
the guys I've known that have made it work, it's even if they climb to the top for a second, it's pretty short.
It's for a second, yeah. It's the stability that like I think people start to want as you get a smidge older, where like the when I think when you're young, there's less there's less weight to every single thing. Like right now, I'm thinking about painting, and then always have to be like, well, is this what I should be spending my time on? Given that like I need to make money, you know, and when that's 100% of your livelihood, it really takes a lot of the fun is the wrong word, but
Joy.
it changes the hobby a lot. You know that
Yeah.
as soon as you kind of introduce that my whole thing has been like I'll do something for fun and then I'll turn it into a job and then I'll start to kind of resent the job part of that fun thing. I've done that with everything, with exercise, with music,
Right.
with painting. Yeah,
No, I mean it's a severe struggle, I think, to figure out how to be like creatively independent.
yeah,
Have a job that gives you the freedom to constantly think creatively
yeah,
and not resent it.
yeah,
And that's tough. I'm
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's tough.
I started art that way, and as the music thing kind of petered out in my mid 20s, I was able to kind of replace it with art. Um, and again, it was kind of only because people responded to it, doing the band stuff, doing the art for bands, that I had any kind of motivation to do it. You know, this very much had to like be convinced to do the first shows and all that stuff. Um, so yeah, and then it kind of just happened. But it's never been my primary job. It's always been I've always had to supplement it with something else.
Right. And so like I mean what else what did you start supplementing with when you closed off with Link 80?
It was web design stuff, which is
Yep.
what I'm still doing. Yeah.
Yep.
So that came out of band world too. People needed websites, and so I just learned how to build websites.
And what that was what year? Cuz that's a sweet spot.
Uh, I mean, it would have been late '90s,
Yeah.
early aughts when I started doing web stuff. Um,
I was kind of randomly thinking about this the other day. I don't remember how we met, but I feel like it was actually something to do with that. And I don't remember. Do you remember?
I know we met at Skull and Sword, I think, right? At Grimey's. I thought we met through Grimey at Grimey's. I thought
It's
I was getting
possible.
because I got tattooed by Grime in like '99 maybe, which
I,
is how I
I
met
would
him.
say that we met at AWR.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, yeah, you're right. When you came
I mean,
for
it must have
yes,
been AWR because I
yeah.
worked there for a few years doing guest
Okay.
spots
Okay.
before I moved back. So, I left. I'm trying to think. I left San Jose in '02, and then I did guest spots with Grimy until like when Grime and Jason were together. So that must have been like '03, '04, '05.
Okay.
And then I moved back in '06. But I think your sister was like one of the first people I tattooed when I moved back.
Rich, but she got tattooed by you because I knew you. So
But we'd been friends for years at that point when I
yeah,
tattooed your
yeah,
sister.
yeah. It must
So
have
yeah,
been.
I can remember. But I feel like we actually linked up somehow because of Grimes' website because you built Aaron Kane's site,
I did.
and
Yeah.
I feel like I don't remember.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
super
probably
vague
right. I
memory.
mean, I did.
Yeah,
Grammy sent me a lot of like web, tattooers that
yeah,
needed website help. So I did Aaron Kane's site, and all the Black Claw stuff when it was a clothing company.
Yeah,
Um,
and so I think, man, I have this vague memory that I must have built a website for Grime a long time ago because I traded him a painting for it.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I still have the painting, so I must. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember, but I think I probably built him a website that was garbage, and then you probably took over and fixed all my mess.
that
And
sounds
I
right.
think that's probably how we met. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we both have sleeves from Grime that we
Same
got
time.
at the same time that have very similar elements
Yeah,
and
like
colors.
03, 04, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Oh, well, I guess it must have even been earlier than that because I was still in San Jose. So yeah, I don't remember. It's dude, it's so much of those years is like foggy. You know,
Yeah.
it's hard to
Mush.
remember.
Well,
But yeah, so you've been chipping away with websites the whole time.
yeah, always. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it's I'm self-employed, so it's not terrible. I'm not working
Right.
for somebody else, and it's not fully like normal job, but it's a lot more dependable than art. So when painting is doing well, I can kind of pull back on the web stuff a little bit, and when painting isn't doing well or when I'm working on something, I can kind of amp it up a little bit to make up the difference.
Right.
So it's worked. I've always been in a full panic ever since I even started that it's going to dry up or change. Um,
Both, or just webs. Is there
but
not
well, both, but
enough? Yeah.
both for different reasons. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think I wasn't totally terrified that the art would dry up until recently, but the website stuff always just seemed like, especially as social media has come on and people aren't really, you know, people don't really care about personal websites very much. So I still have company websites that I'm working on that are complicated that you can't get done. You can't build them yourself with Squarespace.
Okay.
But all of the small website stuff, that's already gone. That business is
Right.
already left pretty much.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of in a panic about there could be a tech pivot any minute that'll kind of make that stuff obsolete.
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever. I mean, I've known you for years. I don't ever think of you as being anything but a painter.
Yeah,
But I think that's because I mean, I think if money was no object, that's what you would do.
yeah, of course.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah,
You
yeah.
just
And I don't talk like I don't identify as a web person.
right.
Uh, I fully do it because I have to do it.
Do you like let's say money is no object,
Mhm.
and that's not going to happen for either of us. But let's just
Yeah.
say,
Okay.
would your subject matter change?
Uh, a little bit, probably.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it would change a little
Oh,
bit.
I
I
mean,
really like. I mean, it's a bummer because I try not to. That's just the wrong thing to do with art, with like personal art, is to think about who the audience is. But it's totally unavoidable if you're doing it as a job, you know. So
yeah,
the one thing I really enjoy doing is portraits, like just simple portraits, and that is not something that people buy. So
oh, really?
yeah. People do not buy if it's a painting that has like some kind of narrative or it doesn't look like it's just a portrait. Uh, People don't need to associate who the person is. It's just it's something I made up. It's like it's more art, I think, for them. And I'm saying for them because I don't agree with this. Like if I would buy a portrait from any artist that I loved, regardless of who the portrait was, as long as that aesthetically it kind of did what it did for me. I found that most people don't want a portrait of somebody they don't know or they don't have a
Interesting.
relationship with.
Hmm.
So if there's not a lot of other things happening in the painting and it's just about this person and they don't have a connection with that person, people aren't going to buy it.
And
So
so when you do move a portrait, is it almost that there's an affiliation with the subject?
yeah, well, probably. I do commissions. Like I like, a portrait of somebody that somebody wants me to do. Or I'm sure if I painted famous people, they would move. Um, I've never done it, but the I think there are people that don't care, but the majority of people do care. So that's one of the things that I do more portraits and less. Um, well, I just do more portraits because I wouldn't. I mean, almost all the portraits I've done, which I still really like, I have. They're all still
Right.
good. So
Crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, without knowing, I would almost assume that that is what people would want. But
yeah, it's hard. I don't. It's
yeah,
what I would want as a, but
I mean,
but
yeah,
I'm a figurative painter that appreciates portraits. Um,
I feel like a portrait's the easiest thing to like identify with as a non-creative, non-artist person. Like just as a collector, I feel
right.
like that's almost like the easiest thing, or even like say landscapes or some of it's
I think it would be if they had a relationship with the subject.
right.
Something about that doesn't they can't separate who it is. Yeah, it's a weird thing and it's a bummer for me as a figurative artist who wants to paint portraits.
Yeah.
Um, so, but otherwise, I think my subject matter would just be bigger. I just paint bigger. I would like to work on big, huge paintings for like months or years at a time. That would be my goal.
Just like over the top,
Just yeah, like the paint.
super intricate, super detailed, takes 2 years to
Yeah,
finish.
yeah.
Yeah.
I really like. I hate starting paintings. I hate thinking about what to paint. I like to
Okay.
be in the midst of a painting and working on it forever. Um, so that would be my. But like that just doesn't work these days. Like
So what do you feel pushed into based off of just the pure economics of selling a painting? Like when you do an exhibit,
mhm.
like do you have kickback from a certain kind of subject matter where you're like, man, I really want to paint that, but if I paint that, I know I'm going to have difficulty selling it, or I don't really want to paint this other thing, but I'm pretty much guaranteed that if I do paint it, it'll sell.
Mhm.
Like, do you have any of that?
Not really.
No.
No,
Okay.
it's no. I wish I did, honestly. Like it would be a bummer, but I would have a little. I would feel like I had more control over the like selling of art part. Like it's a bummer. It's a reality now that like you have to be an artist and a marketing person and a social media person and you have to do all this stuff
Right.
because the galleries don't do it anymore and there's no managers really for like the type of art that I do. So I would like to know that if I painted this kind of subject matter, I could rely on selling them. But for the most part, the only thing that I know as far as that stuff is size and price. Like
Okay.
it's much harder to move stuff that's over a certain size and is over a certain price because then you get into I think the people it's really hard with art because um, your audience is not generally in your like I can't afford my paintings really.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
not astronomically priced, but people who are buying aesthetic additions to their house for 8 grand are not me and not the people that I know a lot of the time. So it's really hard. And art, it's so subjective. Somebody has a connection with one particular thing and they buy that one particular thing. And that one thing may not appeal to anybody else. But as long as you can get in front of that one person that wants it, you're fine. So there's a very like I have a couple collectors that have reliably bought several paintings, but for the most part, I'm always surprised, and everybody is too. Every time I do a body of work, people go, "Well, that one's going to sell, and that one's definitely going to sell, and that one's good," and it's always wrong. So,
Crazy.
like, I mean, I've been doing
And
it for
you've shown a lot. Like, so it's not like you don't have like, you have
I,
a lot of, you have
yeah,
a lot of material to source for that algorithm, and It's just all over the place.
all totally all over the place. Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah, and like at a certain point, I think when social media was more organic, as far as like I could put a painting up, and if it got more responses, it was more appealing to people. Like whatever the imagery was, it got more people interested.
Right.
Now, and so I could kind of use that a little bit to like do a little bit of figuring of what appealed, but that went away so fast to whatever we're in now, where it's like it doesn't nothing really nothing is organic about the like here's a painting, see how many people respond to it. So I can't use that for anything. So yeah, with all of the 20 years of showing,
Mm.
and I can I have a big long list of all the paintings I've done and where they are and if they've sold and who bought them and all that stuff, and there's zero logic.
Do you?
So,
I mean, you're techie for sure. Like you
yeah.
know a lot about that world. Do you, at a core level, like, do you understand how the algorithms work and like, do you understand social media at all? Because I'm lost on it. Like, it used to be a very linear thing where, like, if I logged in, I could log in once a week
Mhm.
and I could know that, say, the last thing I saw last week was you and a painting you made, right?
Yeah.
And I could log in and then I could just go down my feed linear on every single person I've followed, and I could see in what order they had updated their
Sure.
profile or whatever, right?
Right.
So, and it was just like a linear feed. So I could go all the way back down to where your picture was. And then I know that I'd seen everybody that I follow, I'd seen everything in that like feed, right?
Right.
And then I could log back off for a week, go back on a week later, and I could just do the same thing, and kind
Yeah.
of like binge and purge. But
Sure.
but I would be sure that I would see everybody that I'm following. Now it's just like a free for all. Like I have no idea what I'm going to be
I
exposed
mean,
to.
I understand it. I understand what they're doing and what the algorithms are doing, but it doesn't all it does is make me frustrated. Like it's not an understanding that I can use to like game the system. It's an understanding where like we're all fucked
Right.
for real. Like I think that these platforms totally changed how everything works. Like appreciating art, buying art, showing art, being an artist, in every single kind of industry. It changed all of it because it worked so well for everybody. And
Right.
then when these are big companies, we're on their territory. They have just endless resources to tweak things to increase clicks. Like basically we're the product now. Like it used to be that was a tool for us to use, and now we are the product for their thing. And
Right.
we're all totally addicted, and the
Yeah.
the
Dude, it's
change
crazy.
to these platforms killed everything else. So it's not only that we're addicted, but there's nowhere else to go because nothing else is around anymore. So like print magazines and personal websites and all that stuff is gone, and we can't pull ourselves away from this stuff in order to then focus on that stuff again. So I like really see it as problematic because like not only are we all still using it, nobody is happy with it. Like
No, no. I mean,
nobody's
it's,
happy with it.
yep.
They've got the algorithm tuned so well that all of our monkey brains just everybody when they have 1 second of free time opens phones and is looking at car crashes and whatever gets their you know synapse. I mean, I really think it's like kind of like hot wiring stuff on like an evolutionary level where we're just constant because I'll be on it and looking at stuff and being like, what am I doing? Like
Yeah.
I
I actually can't manage it. Like it's a, I mean, I've been addicted to something my whole life. Like I've had just addiction levels on. I mean, dude, you name it. Whether it could be healthy, it could be super destructive. but I've never been able to like necessarily manage. I mean, whether it's, I mean, bad stuff or good stuff like work. You know what I mean? Like where it's like, you know, who doesn't want to work hard, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, now I've worked way too hard. And you know, and now I'm suffering from the fact that I've worked way too hard. So I've always been addicted to something, and I truly find benefits to social media. It has its benefits, but if I have access to it on my phone,
Yeah.
it's terribly detrimental.
Yeah.
So so Justice, my 20-year-old, he's got a password, like a he's got the password to my phone. He locks me out of, I can't use apps, I can't go on Safari, I can't go on the internet. Like I can use my iPhone for like texting people. I can listen to podcasts. I can do audiobooks.
Right.
I can listen to music, and I can use maps. I can check my email. That's it. Like I
mean,
can't
that's
do
smart.
any
And I
social
think
media
I think
because if he unlocks it and I download Instagram, I will waste hours of just like cracked out. Like I'll just sit there and scroll and just be like, I'm an insufficient waste of washed up has
like
been.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that this is the experience of 98% of the people on the platform, and yet we're still all using it. And so hopefully there's some kind of like people are taking a little bit of initiative, and there seems to be some stuff popping up where like the point of it is to not be that.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's not full doom and gloom, but I agree. Like I'm very good at discipline, and I have the
Yeah.
opposite of you. I'm not an addict in any way, but the you know, and I can pull myself away and not use it. But then I find that I don't know what's happening. Like I don't know what's happening in art. I don't know what's happening with galleries. I don't know what's happening with the world because everybody is on there. There's nowhere else to get this information. So I feel kind of detached from, being an artist is already pretty. I never went to art school. I do a show once every 3 or 4 years. So the amount of time that I'm in a social setting with a bunch of artists talking about art is, it's super rare. Mostly I'm by myself in a room painting. So the
Right.
social media.
I mean, I think that's what most artists are, though, right?
Yeah, yeah. So like
I mean, I think
being with some connection to other artists and seeing what people are doing, and it's important, like seeing what painters I like are doing and how they're painting, and when they show I use this for reference, and you can learn from all this stuff. Like there's benefits, but yeah, it's a crazy.
So, back in, now, we'll switch the topic real quick to tattooing because that's what I know best. I started tattooing in 90, I don't know, 6. And there used to be tattoo conventions, and there would be like, dude, like 2 or 3 a year. And like there'd be one in, Miami, and then there'd be one in California, and there might be one that pops up in Massachusetts, and everybody would travel from all over the world. I remember it must have been 97. There was a huge convention in Miami, national convention. It's the first time I met Grime. First time I met Adrian Lee. First time I think probably met Hoyer there. Everyone was there from all over the world. It was just like this huge gathering because there was only 3 or 4 of them a year, right? And so because of that, there was such a huge focus on it that you could go and you would get, I mean, I learned so much at that convention because it was so special and unique. And now, there's probably one every weekend, if not more, just in the States, right? Okay. And so it's watered it down to where you don't want to go. And even if you do go, you get nothing out of it because it's just another thing. And the special, like unique quality of it is gone. And I feel like that's what social media has done on like, on just like just a magnified level of, I can pop on Instagram and scroll through it and just see some of the most amazing, inspiring works of art, right? and they
Mhm.
mean nothing. I've completely forgotten about them by morning. And sometimes 3 minutes later, I'll go to tell my wife, like, oh, you got to check out this thing. I don't even remember where I saw it. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
remember who did it. Where, when it is only that one special time of year, like, I mean, we've done a couple Basels in,
yeah.
it's been a while now, but we did a couple of those. And you would that one, like, I remember the one me, you, and Barber went to, where it was like, I don't know, it must have been on like day 3, and all we had looked at was just a sea of trash.
Yeah,
Where it was just like, I've seen so much garbage that it's
yeah.
like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And then right at the end, we went to that exhibit, and I think it was like West Palm or something, and they had some like Wyeths.
Yeah,
They had like one little corner that was like,
yeah, yeah.
NC
That was
Wyeths,
a
and it
really
was
good
just
one.
like, oh man, like, okay, now it's worth it.
Yeah,
Um, but 99% of what we saw was, it wasn't even necessarily garbage, but it's not memorable. It's just
no,
not
but I
memorable.
mean, and that was in person. Like that
And that's
even
in person.
has, the impact of that is so much more. Like with
Yeah.
the, I've been
Yeah.
kind of writing about this stuff lately, to just for my own mental health, and
Yeah.
like I think the quantity of kind of media that we're all intaking now is really, it's really watering things down. Like just what you were saying, like we only have the capacity to think and remember so much, and like if I can go on Instagram and see 100 unique pictures in 10 seconds,
Right.
like, and then I'm gonna forget every single one of
Yep.
them. Yeah, it's super problematic. I think I really hope something changes, and I kind of feel like, on one side I'm super skeptical because we're also susceptible to like the algorithms, and it's been so easy to get everybody to do this, and now we're at the point in culture where people are making, I mean, to say that people are making content for Instagram is a huge understatement. Like that is a
Oh,
factor in the creation
that's the
of
driving. That's the
most
driving force.
most things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
crazy. But like, we're me and my wife were watching a cooking competition on Netflix the other day, and they were talking about how this food has to be Instagrammable. And I'm just like, fucking, this is so depressing. Like and of course,
Right.
like that's what drives their traffic to their thing because everybody's on it. So like the fact
Right.
that we're stuck there, that people are making stuff specifically for it, it's such a big part of everything, is a huge bummer. But nobody likes it.
I
So
mean, it doesn't feel like one of those things that's going to find balance. It doesn't feel that way. I hope it does, but it doesn't feel like the pendulum's going to swing the other way. I mean, outside of some sort of catastrophic, global event that knocks the grid out or something crazy. It's
no, I
like
don't
people
I
are
don't think it will swing the other way, but I think that
just,
there will be other options that, even if it's a tiny community of people that are just like, we've had it. We're
yeah.
going to go over here and we're going to be 2% of all the creators or artists or whatever. Um, and it's not going to work as well. And we're going to, but it works the way we want it to work. And it's just us. And like, I think that might happen because I'm more and more running into people that are just not on social media, which I really respect. And when I take full breaks from it, for the most part, aside from feeling a little bit like detached, I'm
Right.
much happier.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's interesting because, again, I mean, your whole life you've been super disciplined. You're not, um, you, I don't think you definitely don't have a negatively addictive personality. You may have a positively addictive personality. Um,
I don't think I have an addictive personality. I'm very uh, follow the rulesy. Like if I do a thing that I feel works out for me in you could literally apply that to anything. If I ate a
Yeah.
food that I feel like was the right food to eat at that time, I will just go like, all right, that's the food I eat at that time every day.
Right. You're not going to go into excess and eat it, overeat it, or
No, but I
yeah.
but I will get to the point where I'm so regimented that it's just painfully annoying to everybody else. And they're being just not flexible in any way is not the best. Like there is an extreme that is not like the most practical thing in the world, but it's less of an addiction and more of just a like it's how I paint too. Like I'm following rules, I'm following steps. I'm not a like just let it happen, run with it kind of person.
No, no, yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate it because my creative side's the exact opposite, but
Yeah.
it's really interesting to watch how, you know, in one sense, we've had very similar paths.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, very similar, but like kind of like the opposite sides of it, like
Yeah.
I'm, I think mine's more chaos driven and yours is more structured and, um,
Yeah, it is
like,
very similar.
like, do you ever find yourself like say with like working out, because you're obsessive about working out.
Yeah.
Do you ever find times where you're like, I know I shouldn't go today, but I'm gonna go anyways?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
So
almost always.
to me, that crosses into the addiction realm, but not in a negative. But you shouldn't do it. You should spend your time elsewhere. But you're like, I'm just not gonna feel good if I don't get this dopamine hit. I'm gonna go do it anyways. And I have that
Yeah.
all the time with jujitsu.
Yeah, a lot of that for me though is like the but I can also have it the other way where like if I know that I will benefit from not working out and I do work out, I'll then feel guilty about working out. So it's really it's less of a dopamine hit and more that it's like I I did the thing that I have to do today so that the rest of my day is the way it should be. I mean, it's all rules and regimented and like
Right.
if I can fill the gym, and if I do something else in that time that I see as beneficial, it'll kind of and this is not feeling like I'm not at all in touch with my feelings. This is like if I go for a super long walk, I don't think
Right.
it's the dopamine hit that does it. I think it's the fact that for the rest of the day, I know that I did some kind of exercise and I'm not gonna die.
Right.
So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's not logical, but
No, I mean, dude, I would never. All the years we've been friends, I would think you are the antithesis to addiction,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
Instagram got you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's the crazy thing. And I have this talk with my daughter all the time where it's like, I have to do. I've definitely. I don't think I struggle with it anymore, but I've definitely had times in the past where I have to put in work to not fall into arrogance. Like I can't
mm-hmm.
let I can't think about myself too much.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's in a negative, like self-loathing way,
Yeah,
where like I have to make sure that like I'm spending my time thinking about things external to me, just to like keep myself balanced and I guess level-headed. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like it's just that narcissistic self-loathing or cocky side, like it's just a nasty thing to deal with. And so I've put a ton of work into that, and I think I walk a fairly good line of doing it. And Instagram crushes that instantaneously.
Yeah,
Like I will get onto it, and if unchecked, like if I'm just laying in bed and I'm not paying attention to what I'm looking at and I'm just kind of like perusing the interwebs, right? I can just automatically, I will just start feeling so insufficient and like such a has been and so washed up. And I don't even know why I try. It's just like, I should just give up. And it's just like, bleh. And so I talked to my daughter about it where I'm like, dude, if that happens to me, like,
right. I know.
what are you doing on this thing?
Yeah,
Like, cause I don't really feel like it's something that I struggle with the way an 18-year-old girl is going to struggle with it. It's not like I don't have that kind of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and I have some, I have years of work, and I have a skeleton to kind of hold me up and
Mhm.
not be victim to that, and it still gets me. So
Yeah.
it's like, what is this doing to the rest of the population
Yeah.
that hasn't put work in, isn't self-aware, hasn't, like, they're young, they just haven't grown up yet. It's like, man, this has to be terrible for them. Like,
It
and I have,
seems.
three young kids. My oldest is, not a young kid anymore, but 20, 18, and 14. It's like, I feel like all of them are just ripe for destruction, social media
It
based, and
seems.
they do a pretty good job of staying off of it. But I think probably a lot of that comes from having these kind of conversations.
It seems crazy. Like I can't imagine having kids or being a kid in this. You're already so concerned about everything. Like imagine if
Yeah.
your audience was thousands, thousands of people instead of just like the 30 other people that you see on a regular
Yeah.
basis. Um,
I can only imagine as a teenager right now, growing up with social media, I think the only perspective that you could have, which isn't necessarily logical, it's not true. Well, it is. I think it is logical. I don't think it's true. But the perspective would have to be that every single thing I do, every outfit I wear, every mistake I make, everything I do is global and permanent.
yeah,
Like, everyone's gonna see it, and it's never gonna go away. And living with that kind of, like, just thing, like, over you, has to just be like, it has to be terrible for society.
yeah. I mean, I think about with the band world and the art world, the part of what's motivating and why you kind of keep doing it is because you know people that it worked out for, right? Like we would tour with bands or have friends in bands that got huge and did really well.
Yeah.
And also you know all these bands that should be huge and nobody gave a fuck and they broke up and nobody
Right.
knows who they were. And the quality, if you compare the two, are not dissimilar. Like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's this element of like timing and chance and luck and talent and whatever happens to be popular at the time. And that really applies to art everywhere. Like with painting too. There's plenty of painters I know that are totally amazing and are very well compensated and famous, deservedly so. And tons more that are as talented or as, I hate the word talent, I don't know why I say it. They're just as good, and nobody cares because maybe their art doesn't appeal to society right now or whatever, right? I think with the way Instagram is, where everybody looks like they're living the coolest life in the world, it's so curated and it's so deliberate that like that element of subjective kind of luck is taken out of it, where like people are seeing what people are doing to get followers and they're just doing that. And that line of like, you got to make the duck face and no, that's changed to this filter, now you have to throw money in the air or like whatever the thing is, that snowball effect of everybody doing the same thing in order to get eyeballs is worrying. Like it makes me, the thing I found the most frustrating about art and music, which is that like kind of, you have to just throw this stuff out there and hope it grabs, hope the timing kind of lines up where people respond to it. And if they don't respond to it, at least you did the thing that you like doing, and maybe you have to go work a coffee shop on the on the on your off time. Like that used to be really frustrating, and now I really miss that, where there was a little bit of like, I'm going to do the thing that I want to do, I'm going to put it out into the world. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. As an artist, you kind of have to live with that. You don't deserve fame or popularity or a living. You just do what you got to do to kind of get through it. To where social media is, we're all kind of thinking like we're the algorithm. Like this gets this, gets this, gets this. Like I have to follow that thing. I have to, a lot of the artists I talk to are concerned about how often they're posting new content, which is right. Which, and for me, like if I posted a thing a day, it would be ridiculous. Like, like
You can't. No, it's
I'm
like,
working
yeah,
on
you
a
can't.
painting, the next day it doesn't look any different. And nobody wants to, you know what I mean? It's like, it just doesn't work. Um,
I'm working on an oil painting now that I think probably about 6 or 7 months deep in, and I have a ton of other things I do, so I don't by any means work on it every day. Um, but I tried to video some of the process,
yeah.
and I was like, this is the most boring. Like, I mean, I just deleted all the footage because I'm just like, this is so boring. Like, I worked on this thing for 4 hours and I barely did anything.
Yeah.
It's like you see, and that's the catch, right? Is you'll go on Instagram and you'll see somebody just they know how to video it, they know how to fudge the lines, they know how to make and it looks awesome. It's super fun to watch because they did this amazing oil painting in 12 seconds. And
Right.
it's like,
I mean, that's the thing that, you do a time lapse of 6 months of painting, that is going to look great. But you know what? You posted it once and now it's gone. you know,
Right.
and like
Right.
that element of these days where like when I do a painting that I'm happy with or I do a show and I'm like thinking about, oh, when do I show this to people? Because that used to matter.
Right.
And now it doesn't. And it's so like anticlimactic. Like people, um, it just goes away. Like you
Because
put it out,
there's no like proper unveiling now. Like you
right,
have to kind of like because you're giving at least little like breadcrumbs
right,
just to keep people interested along the way. Where it used to be, you could work on a whole exhibit for a year or two, show no one, and the gallery is going to put the work in. They're going to get everybody to show up, and it's all grassroots, right? Like it's actually people talking to people, and you get people to come to the opening just based off of word of mouth,
yeah.
and then you get to see everything at once.
And
And you
it's the way that you're look. I mean, there's such a when you're in a gallery looking at a show, you walk around the whole show in maybe 2 minutes, and then you're in there for another 45 minutes looking at paintings. Like the amount of like not
right,
only are you seeing it in person, which is how paintings should be seen, but you're just taking so much more time to kind of like take things in and talk to people about it and look at the stuff close up and
yeah.
maybe you like it more than you thought you did or maybe you don't like it as much as you thought you did or whatever. um, and that just goes away, and it's gotten to the point for me where I'm trying to do less of looking at other people's art on Instagram because it I know that I'm just getting kind of shortchanged with the experience. Like I want to see paintings for the first time in person, and I'm going to try and make an effort to do that. And because I'm just not getting the right, I'm not doing it right.
Well, and you kind of touched on something I wanted to talk about earlier, where um, with I think I mean with my tattooing for sure, and I think most of the people that I probably look up to or have always stayed inspired by, it's not meant to be viewed on Instagram. Like like the tattoos that most of the people I look up to do. There's a few people that do some simple work that I really like. That occasionally there are some people that do some stuff that looks good, but most of the guys that I stay tuned into, their tattoos look terrible viewed just digitally. And honestly, even just a portfolio, it's not very good. They're meant to be viewed in a three-dimensional aspect. Like you run into the guy out in public at the grocery store and he's got this sleeve and it's like, yes. Like, I mean, that was the great thing about living in San Francisco is you could just go to the park and see some guy with some, amazing Aaron Kane sleeves from the 90s and they still look good. But there's no way that that looks good on a phone. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely impossible. And I think the same thing applies to your paintings.
Oh yeah, my paintings
Like,
are terrible.
well, I mean, and don't take it wrong. I love the painting I have. I have a couple from you,
Yeah.
but I take a picture of your painting all the time just because it's in my living room.
Yeah.
And it's so impressive. I'll take pictures of like my dogs and they're like sleeping on the couch. And it's like I'll look at the phone in front of me as I'm looking at the scene in front of me, and your painting just flattens out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just like, oh man, it's too bad that there's not a way for me to take this picture of these dogs and Aaron's painting and capture the depth of the painting.
Yeah.
But it's just it doesn't do it. You have to see it in person for it to hold any amount of weight.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
I think that has to apply with everybody out there.
It does. I mean, and there, I think that I think there are artists now that like it works really well for with Instagram. People that can paint really fast or real fast drawers that, like
How much do you think that backfires on them?
I think it backfires on everybody. Like, I think there's also huge benefits to the people where it works, though. Like Instagram did very well for me until it didn't. Like, I could reach a lot more people in an organic way for a couple years there where it was really great. And
Yeah.
I was making business decisions based on that. Like I can release prints and I know that X amount of prints are going to sell. I could do a book and I know that if 40,000 people see that the book is available and 1% of them buy it, that's great. Like that's awesome. And unfortunately that has now all changed. And you can't rely on that at all because you have no control over it. Yeah, it's tricky, and the fact that we're dealing with it's another layer of like bummer that we're dealing with media that just look terrible. The 99.9% of the people that are seeing one of my paintings or seeing one of your tattoos is seeing it teeny tiny on a phone flat
Right.
while they're in line at the grocery store.
Yep.
So it's a bummer. And then people see, but people perceive me as being a famous oil painter that's doing well because of I'll put one picture up and there'll be very few it's so skewed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's the problems are so deep. They're so layered and complicated.
I think some of those like the way people view you as being successful or whatever. I think that's always been there with social media, and I would even go back as far as saying I think that was there with magazines. It's just faster. It's just like so much faster. But I mean, you would have that with magazine articles. Like I remember having magazine articles come out in the '90s or even like early 2000s where it was like by the time it came out, all the info was wrong, and people would have a perspective of what you said or what you did or and think, and then they would make assumptions based off of it, and you're like, well, none of that's accurate, and there's no way for me to there's no way to correct it or validate any of it. You just kind of have to like let it go. I think social media had that for me, at least at the very beginning.
It did.
It's just so much faster now. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge obstacle. Like the social media side of it's just like trying to be an artist. It's a huge obstacle.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, for me, I've been pulling away from it and doing I've been writing on Substack, which is a blogging, not social media thing that doesn't have the same kind of algorithmic stuff happening, and it's ironic.
Substack is that a website or an app?
It's both. It's an app
both.
and a
Okay.
website, but it's it could not be further from what is popular. Like it is long. It was mostly long form writing with no element of uh, click on this because we need your eyeballs. Like, so the fact that it even exists at all is totally amazing and pretty entertaining for me. But they're like a lot of journalists and a lot of writers who are on there writing, and some you can charge for it or you can not charge for it. Um, but just doing that as a kind of cathartic way to participate and put content out there in a way that I feel like I have a little more control over. And relatively speaking, nobody cares and nobody is seeing it, but it does make me feel better. Like to spend
No,
some time.
no one cares outside of the creative writing circle, or even inside the creative writing circle. No one
Well,
cares.
I think clearly there are a lot of people that read sub authors on Substack because they're, you know, they're real authors. They're people that wrote books or people that were reporters and they lost their jobs, or, you know, there's a lot of pretty established writing media people on there. I was in comparison to normal social media, I'm sure that the numbers are tiny. And even fewer people care about me as a painter who is writing about painting, which is just not like I get it. But it's just a thing that I'm doing currently to help my brain a little bit. Like I spent the last year working on a show in New York, and just part of the impetus for doing the show was like, let's. The last time I did a show didn't feel great for many reasons. This is 5 years later. Let's see what doing a show in 2023 feels like. And then I'm going to use that to kind of gauge the next few years. Like, do I want to then put another effort into another show, or do I want to kind of pivot and do some other things? Um, and so I had that show 2 months ago, and writing about art is kind of a way to kind of make myself feel better about that year of painting and the show, which was very like uh, educational in a bad way.
Right.
Yeah,
You learned things you didn't want to learn.
I learned things that I was pretty sure were going to happen that I was really hoping were not going to happen, which is just
So
it's
if someone wants to read your Substack, like
Mhm.
can they like can we just go look at your writings and read them?
Cool. Yeah, yeah.
How?
There, it's linked on all my stuff. It's on my Instagram bio
Oh, okay.
tree thing. Um, and I'm sure if you go to, it's called Certain Rules is the name of the thing, and eventually it's going to be hopefully other people writing about
Oh,
art too.
okay. So certain rules
Yeah,
is your, I don't know, profile or page
yeah. It's
or
like my publication. You know, it's essentially a
yeah,
blog. All Substack
but
is
that's just you.
right now. It's just me.
Okay. So I thought you had two different writing things going on,
Mhm.
and I thought one of them was on Substack,
Yeah,
and I thought one of them was on certain rules.
yeah, yeah. Different. Certain Rules is what my thing is called on Substack. The experience is exactly the same as 15 years ago on the internet when you're reading blogs, which is kind of fun throwback, weird thing. Um,
Okay.
since I started doing it, I have since found a bunch of authors and people writing that I really like, and so it's actually turned into a like I can go. Richard Dawkins is on Substack, and that's crazy. I can go read his stuff. Um, so there's a kind of a cool thing there, and the neat part is that the people who seem to be behind this platform are very much doing it to be anti social media. Um,
Right.
as far
Okay.
as like there's no algorithm stuff trying to get clicks because you can't do it because he's
So
on writing.
do you follow Dawkins?
Uh-huh.
Is it? Oh, are you guys friends? Like, what's
No,
the terminology on
it's
Substack?
just that if you subscribe,
You subscribe.
so
Okay.
if you subscribe,
So
you have a little
Me.
homepage and like you can see the people that you subscribe to their last posts. But
Okay.
there is a like there is kind of a Twitter thing on there, and there are likes and comments, but it doesn't seem to be used really. There's not
Okay.
the doesn't feel like social media is what I'm trying to say. Um, and again, I'm not, and this is like very much at one point I did a YouTube thing and I tried to do a Patreon thing. And the goals of those things were to have it be another avenue of whatever income, promotion, art. This is very much a like, I'm doing this because I enjoy it. It makes me feel better about all the other things, and that's it.
Yep.
And I kind of like just the fact that I'm essentially spending time making a blog in 2023 makes me happy. Like I feel
Yeah,
like
for the creative outlet. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, that's exactly how I feel about doing this. Like, I have no, intentions of monetizing it or it
yeah.
being a
Well, I
thing.
think this is
I enjoy the fact that,
this is the result of our kind of addiction to social media. Is like we're having to do these other things. We're having to be a little more disciplined using those platforms, but we're having to do some other stuff to kind of uh, neutralize the bad stuff that we're having to deal with. Right? I don't feel like I can fully pull off of social media because there are still things that I like about it and things that are helpful for my painting career. And I feel like this kind of like helps balance the fuckery. Like if I'm spending a half an hour and I end up looking at the explore page and poisoning my brain, I can then go spend 2 hours writing about art and kind of make myself feel a little bit better and equalize that.
yeah, I mean, from my perspective, not knowing anything about where you sit, I would think somebody like you in your shoes, I would think that you could completely remove yourself from social media, not use it at all,
Mm-hmm.
totally be a mysterious person in the art world, as long as you had someone representing you that knew how to do what you should be doing, like
Right,
someone to
right.
fill that gap.
There's the
And then
catch.
and that's what in my head should be the gallery's job. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
just seems like whatever gallery is representing you, that's their goal, is we need to build this guy up because he doesn't even have a social media presence, and we want, to, illustrate to the world like what a brilliant painter he is, and then they do their job, but there's a
Yeah,
huge void there. Like,
yeah.
it
Well,
seems like it's not really a social media problem as much as it is a gallery director issue, where because they don't do, it seems, I, I could be wrong, but it seems that galleries don't really give a shit about promoting.
yeah.
They just have a space and they just fill that space and fill. They kind of feel like they're doing you a favor because they have a location,
Mm-hmm.
and then they put all the work back on you. Where, not that it, I don't think it dumbs down your art, but it's too much on the artist's plate to not have a director fill that gap.
I mean, that is very true. But the other big like impact I think of the way social media and streaming has gone, and I kind of wrote about this recently, and you're seeing this in like the writer strike and the actor strike and even the auto worker strike. Those are all kind of reactions to technology has gone this way. The companies have adapted to the new technology, but the way that they treat their employees hasn't adapted. It's still the same. And so you run into this thing where like, people are still the actors and directors are still getting their contracts say they get residuals from TV and in the movie theater, but the streaming services don't have to pay residuals because they don't even have to report how many people watch their stuff. And that's been and now most of the world is watching things on streaming, and all the actor people are going like, wait a second, what happened to the residual thing? Like, we need to update this to match where society is now with streaming. And so I feel like there's a parallel there with art and galleries, and the galleries are still getting the same cuts that they've always got, but the galleries
Yeah.
aren't
Yep.
there's no print stuff anymore. They're not really spending any money for promoting. They're using the same social media that we're using, and oftentimes they're worse at it than the artists. So we
Right.
have, the relationship used to be the galleries. You show with the galleries, nobody knows who you are. The galleries fix that problem, and then 10
Right.
years down the line, when you have a fairly good collector base because of that relationship, everybody is doing well because of that,
Yeah.
right? You
Well, and
need,
that was the artist side is if you could find a gallery that had, you know, like they had a wide reach
yeah,
of leverage with, say book publishers or magazines or art like art collectors, like and the gallery had all of those connections that you don't have because you've spent the last 18 months in your art studio burning the candle at both ends.
yeah,
The gallery's got everything they need to keep you going. And so you're like, hey, the relationship from the artist is I'm going to give you half of my income, half of my hard work, because you have the access to move this stuff and you have the access to get me book publications and magazine attention and get me wrote up in a newspaper article. Like you've got all of this leverage, and I'm going to exchange my work for that value.
yeah,
And no artist I know has that relationship with the gallery. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
There's a few that I know that do well with galleries, and they don't resent the gallery relationship, and the gallery seems to be working well for the artist. But in the vast majority of circumstances, that's how it is. It seems, we're get it's they take 50%, and the majority of in my case specifically, the majority of art that I sell are to people on the internet, kind of via social
Yeah.
media, that
You're
found me
you're
via
just
social
selling to your people.
media. Whether that was like
Yeah.
recently or in the days when it worked well, um, you know, probably both. But yeah, it just doesn't, and I want people to see the paintings in person. That's the goal, and the gallery still is the
Fills
spot
that need.
for that. So
Yep.
you still need the galleries, but the trade off doesn't. It's not matching where we are now. They don't. They're not. They don't have to put all this money into the show to have it. I'm putting it. Sometimes years of work into a show. If the galleries don't sell the paintings, that's a fucking problem, right? Like there
Right.
seems to be a lot of like, well, just throw the work out there and see if anybody cares. Um, but that's not like they shouldn't be only here's a place where I can hang a painting in person, because if that's the case, people can come to my studio. Like I'll put them on the wall, come to the studio, we can talk about them. Like the it yeah. So that was part of my like last show, and why I kind of was curious what that looked like now with social
So
media.
the you had a big gap. I think you showed in 17 or 18, and then you just showed again.
Uh-huh.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Both of those were in New York.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, the one from was it 18?
18. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got well, okay. So backtrack. The focus of this podcast, or what I don't even know if it's a podcast, it's a YouTube channel. Um, the focus of whatever we're doing here is obstacles, right?
Yeah.
And if I remember right, that exhibit you worked on for like a year or plus.
Hmm.
I think I maybe stayed with you right when you were about to do it.
Yeah.
I think I came out with you maybe for I think I was out for Luke's wedding.
Yeah.
and you got decimated in like a snowstorm, right?
Yeah,
Is
there
that
was
that show?
yeah,
It
there
was
was
like it was like a massive.
that show was like it was the yeah, it was just a cascade of things going wrong. So there was a bomb cyclone in New York on the day of the opening, which
Right.
I'm from California. I don't know what a bomb cyclone is, and the whole city
You
shut
do
down.
now.
Yeah, I do now. So nobody really came. We had to have two openings because the city was shut down and people couldn't really get to the first opening. We had to have another opening. It was like 15 degrees the whole time we were there. Um, we got sick instantly because we were staying in an Airbnb that had like a draft in it. Uh, and when the paintings came back from that show, a crate of them got lost by FedEx. Um, and eventually found,
Lost.
well, they misdelivered this. I feel like this shit only happens to me, but they misdelivered a crate of three of the bigger paintings from the show to a carpet factory or something in one of the Carolinas. So instead of the crate going from New York to California, it ended up, and when it went missing, FedEx could not fucking care less. Like it was just a nightmare of like trying to. Eventually, somebody that followed me on social media who worked at FedEx had to get involved, and like somebody, I think it was somebody from Florida actually, that may have
I
known you.
I think it's my client. I
Yeah,
think my client
yeah,
Matt
yeah,
ended up tracking you down.
yeah.
Um, hey,
So he,
hold on one sec, Sarah. Can you grab that? It's super inconvenient time for someone to knock at the door, but I do. I think my client Matt
yeah,
tracked it down for you.
yeah, he helped.
This is what happens when you do a podcast at your house.
In your living room. The
Um, that's awesome.
Yeah, so they eventually found it, but when FedEx went to the people who were delivered the crate, unpacked the crate before they realized that it was paintings and not carpet. And then when FedEx realized that that's a month later, when FedEx realized that that's where the paintings were, and they went to go get them, they just took all three paintings and put them in a cardboard box and shipped them to me. So no packing material. Paintings were face to face, hanging wires in the paintings, like vibrating and scraping the paint off of all the frames were broken by the time it came back.
No way.
I got $800 as an insurance claim from that. Um, it was just a nightmare of
Was
things.
it fixable? Could you fix them?
The paintings were fixable, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thankfully, because I paint on dye bond, there's a advertising for
Oh,
painting
that's right. Yeah, right.
on
Dibon.
composite material. Yeah.
I think as far as obstacles go,
Mm-hmm. The
like
purge.
if you look back at your last 20 years, like what's the gnarliest thing that you had to go through?
I mean, all my shit getting stolen probably, and my
That's, I mean, it's just like, it's such a
yeah,
spotlight for me of like, it's just like can you tell that story? Cause it's so bizarre.
yeah. So in 2013, I moved to LA. I was going to move to LA, and it was a being a Bay Area person. I'm like very anti LA. You kind of grow up as being you're either LA or the Bay
Yeah.
Area, California.
Yep.
Um, but at that point, all my friends had moved to LA. There was all this music and art and stuff happening in LA, and so I felt like I needed to go try and live in LA and do the LA thing and see if it worked out. So I packed up my entire life in a U-Haul, um, and the next day was going to drive down to LA and move to LA. So all my studio, all my life
Yeah.
things.
You packed everything up and then took a nap.
Yeah. Um, Parked the U-Haul on purpose in a very fancy neighborhood where the place I was staying, And this was just out of necessity because I couldn't do the drive that night after packing up, after moving out.
Yeah. Right.
Went to a nice neighborhood, left the U-Haul on a side street in this fancy neighborhood that was on the same block as my friend's house. Spent the night, U-Haul was gone. So, which is a thing that happens in the Bay Area all the time that I found out later. That like that's a very easy thing to steal. Like if a U-Haul has a lock on it, it's filled with stuff. You just take the whole truck. So
bad.
So yeah, so I had to kind of start from scratch as far as everything.
And it was literally everything.
I mean, I had a small, tiny bit of stuff in storage, and I had a little bit of stuff with me. But like all my clothes, all the computer stuff, all the art,
laptops, hard drives, paintings, family memorabilia, like everything.
Yeah.
Never recovered.
No.
Totally had to start over.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and people helped. Like I was in a position where like people donated stuff. I had like art supply people give me things. Like Barbara gave me a lot of material. Like it was not terrible to get everything back up and running. And I have a kind of relationship with stuff now that I kind of value. I really actively try not to have things, and I still have lots of things, but I'm not. It really turned the collector part of my like. I used to have a big CD collection, and I would collect art books, and like I would just be a collector, and I would kind of. And now I'm like really don't want any of that, and it changed my relationship with like acquiring things for the sake of acquiring things.
In a beneficial way?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you almost? I mean, I remember it happening to you. It was, I mean, it was devastating.
Yeah. It was super traumatizing. Yeah.
Yeah. But you got a lot of good out of it.
Yeah.
Now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I got a lot of good out of it then.
And was it a beneficial thing?
Yeah, probably in the long run. I mean, I'm still there's things that were stolen that I miss that I will never not be bummed about. But at the time, luckily, Instagram was very useful and worked. This was kind of before the turn. It was I guess almost exactly 10 years ago.
Instagram was pretty new.
I mean it was, and I had followers and people could see when I had this thing happen, and all these people donated on a GoFundMe. And the art community, which I've always felt pretty detached from, being a person that just lives in a room by themselves all the time, it was really nice. Like people helped. Company, I mean Jerry's Artorama gave me all kinds of shit. I'd never once bought anything from that company and had never heard of them.
No way.
Yeah, and like
all through social media.
Yeah. And like, really thankful that was available then at that time. So, yeah, and I think there were some benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you look back on that happening in general, is it a negative, positive, or is it just a neutral?
I mean, it's still probably a negative.
It's still negative.
Like I think the victiminess of it, that it was somebody else's. I think if it had been like a fire or something, I would feel a little bit differently about it.
Yes.
When you're and I grew up in the Bay Area, and like theft is like you just live with theft. Like in Portland, people leave things on their porch, and it's still there the next day. In the Bay Area, like if you have a quarter on your seat in the car, they will break all your windows to get to the quarter. Right. And if they can see, if you put if you have tinted windows in the back of your car, they'll break the windows because they think that something's in there because you have tinted windows. So like, there's not, it's to a level, and I was totally used to it and kind of desensitized to it. Um, but that part of it where somebody's actively like doing something to you, I think makes it still kind of a negative part. And the time around it was so chaotic, and I was like just buying, having to like buy a hammer, and there's just all that stuff. I lived out of a duffel bag for like over a year, just because I had no interest in like buying furniture to replace, like at that point everything's hand me down. I'm like using a dresser that I got from somebody. Like, who cares? Um,
Right. I
so
mean, I've had my house broken into twice, just and nothing personal. I mean, personal importance has ever been taken.
yeah,
Tools, bikes, things like that. But I was always impressed by the fact that when it happens, it takes months to realize what's gone.
hmm
Like, because there's just no way to quantify all of it. Like
yeah,
one day you're just like, oh, like you kind of forgot about it, and you're like, I think I'll go for a bike ride. And then you're like, wait, well, they took all the bikes?
yeah,
Or you go to use the tool and you're like, where's the tool? Where did I leave it? And then you're like, crap, they took the whole bag of,
yeah,
but it takes so long to like figure out what's gone and what's not. And then, there's a police report where they're like, well, what did they take? And it's like, I, I don't know.
yeah.
Lots of stuff. It's
That part
hard to
was
like,
easy for me because it was everything.
because it was everything,
Yeah,
right? You're like all the way down to nothing.
yeah,
Um,
just like the ramifications of that, like having to get a new passport and like every little, you know,
right.
every little tiny thing just became
Right. Birth certificate, social security card, all of that stuff
right.
gone.
I can't do my taxes that year because I lost all my tax stuff. And like, yeah, I think there's about 2 years of like reference photos for paintings that I lost, which like really bummed me out. Like just taking models and like and images of paintings that I didn't have anymore.
Yep.
Thankfully, I had lots of backups, and I'm still and now very much a like backup person. Um, but there's like a whole of media that is gone. And like when I was doing the book a couple years ago, like that was a bummer. Like 2 years out of a 10-year career is a long time of stuff that's
Yeah.
just not there anymore.
Just gone. Right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, I always think of that as to me, I think it would be a fairly crippling um, obstacle to get over. Like
Yeah.
it's just. I
But
mean,
it does.
Kundell had the same thing when his studio blew up. It's like
Right.
it's. I mean, he didn't lose all of his home stuff. He lost all of his work stuff, but it's like, man, how do you quantify that much damage? It's like
It's fucked, but also at the same time, it is just stuff. And like, if you've ever had a person that's sick in your family or something, like the
yeah,
the comparison to like what is actually bad, really kind of changes.
100%.
And I think that's important.
Yeah, and that realization gets you through that
Yeah. Yeah.
chaos.
It's just
Yeah,
things. Yeah. Like if I lost all my studio stuff, I just buy new studio stuff and make more paintings. Like it's
yeah. There's definitely a degree of there's a pragmatic kind of approach to recognizing that it's just stuff and not getting too attached. And then I think sometimes that can be too cold also. I mean, it's a good thing to hold on to when it's your stuff that you've lost.
right.
Not a good thing to do when it's your buddy that lost his stuff.
Right.
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 It's like it's such a personal thing that you can't really like, wield that for them, but
Yeah.
obviously like a very practical thing to hold on to when you've lost what feels like to be everything,
Right.
knowing that it's nothing. You can buy
Yeah.
more.
I mean, you
You
kind
know,
of have to. You either do that or you're fucking a miserable, you know. Uh,
you
so
fall into despair if you
yeah,
have too much. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
if all those things start owning you,
yeah.
um, then yeah, it can be really bad. I mean, I went through a bit of that when I got divorced, where it was like, wow, 17 years of building a thing, and now I'm leaving with nothing. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, well, it is all stuff I can rebuild. You know,
Yeah.
so then it just becomes a thing of like, well, I'll just make more stuff, build more
Yeah.
stuff, work,
Yeah.
just start over, and
Yeah.
once you kind of understand that you're just starting over, and you've accepted that of like, well, now I have nothing left to lose. Like there is that element, where it's like, okay, I've got nothing else to lose.
It, yeah. It made me realize also that like as a painter or an artist or whatever, if you're there's so much other stuff that we have to deal with, all the stuff that we're talking about. If I'm working on a painting that is going well, everything else is like kind of less important. Even if I know I'm going to work on this painting for 6 months, and if I ever thought about what my billable hours would be, it would just be a colossal spend. But if it's working, then everything else kind of doesn't matter.
How
And
do you deal with like especially larger scale work, but I suppose anything really, but how do you deal with what's the let me rephrase the whole question. What's say the longest average you'll spend hours wise on a painting? Like I know I'm not saying like what's the most you've ever spent, but just on average, if you took your 20% most time consuming, like about how long does it take you to do a time consuming piece?
I mean, I don't know about hours. I think probably like 6 months, four to
Okay.
6 months from
So
like,
let's just say at a 6 month level, you got a painting. You've started it off. You've done all the layout. You've got your inspiration. Like your muse is everything's set up. Everything's going good. You're 3 months into your 6 month project. You're halfway done. So you've
mm,
got a ton of time invested, and you completely lose your creative inspiration on the piece.
yeah.
Like you're just whatever, like artist block, writer's block, like that thing. What do you do to mitigate that?
Um, well, there's two answers to that question. One is that I usually don't get that that deep into a painting. The I've had so many paintings where I put a lot of time into work and then decided that the painting was garbage, but it wasn't because I lost my like inspiration or um, I get artist block. It's that this painting is not going to go the way I want it to go. From a planning, from like this was a flawed premise. Not that I did.
And you recognize that pretty early into the process, or sometimes you're halfway through.
Sometimes I'm halfway through, but the longer I paint, the more I paint, the earlier I can figure that out, and I'm very conscious of it. So, I would say in the last like 5 years, I haven't really had many paintings where I've gotten pretty far into it before I've thrown it away. Like in my first 10 years of paintings, there were several paintings where I worked on for months and then threw them away, um, or even cut out the piece that was working and turn that to its own painting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So, but these days I can kind of tell pretty early if I do the right prep stuff, if it's going to work out. And the danger mid painting is like having the confidence that I'm on the right track. That's really like the trickiest part for me is coming up with a plan, getting halfway into the painting, and knowing that I need to keep going and not give up because it looks bad at that time. Like that's one thing that's like the way I'm painting these days almost makes the painting look worse until it's further along than it used to be. Like the way, just from a technical standpoint, the way I used to paint, within a couple weeks, it would be looking good enough that it would motivate me to keep going. And the way I'm painting now, it looks very bad for 75 to 85% of the process. Um,
Okay.
and I
So
just
the
have to kind of,
discipline of knowing it's going to work out gets you through.
yeah, and like every single painting, my wife will say, "How do you like it?" And I'm just like, "I fucking hate this," and she'll be like, "Don't not to?" So I'm trying not to kind of evaluate how it's going so much. I know the stuff that has to happen. I just do the stuff. I'm just kind of busy work. Like at that point, I really don't feel like I'm being even creative. Like I'm just doing. For a lot of the way I paint, uh, I don't feel like an artist. I feel more like a carpenter. Like I'm building a thing. I know the steps to build this table, so I'm just building the table. Like I'm not making creative decisions consciously while I'm building the table. I'm just building the table. In the
All of the creativity comes on the front.
or yeah, they're in. I'm clearly making creative decisions all the time, but I'm not kind of acknowledging them as creative decisions. And at the very end, where I'm saying like, here, I have a pretty good idea of where this painting is now. Is it done? Did I miss something? Do I need to add something? Is this thing look weird? Is this just distracting? Um, but yeah, I feel like the majority of time spent on the painting is just um, like I feel like a tradesman or like a journeyman. Like I'm just
Okay.
doing the thing.
So as you're working on a painting, you're kind of in a self-loathing, I don't like this as you're doing it, but you have a discipline that's going to get you through. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
actively trying not to evaluate the painting too much
Okay.
these days.
So
Like,
I'm it's interesting. I have the exact opposite, which I guess is whatever, but
okay,
I've felt this with every painting I've ever done, where while doing it, it's the greatest thing I've ever done. And I'm so stoked because I can tell at my core it's finally going to be the greatest painting I've ever done. And I chase that wind the whole way through, so stoked. And as soon as it's done, I just hate it so much as soon as
interesting.
it's done.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
totally
and I
awesome.
mean, and that's been every painting I've ever done. It only gets worse the more complex the painting is. So, if I sit down to do, like a little watercolor painting of an iceberg,
Mhm.
and it takes 2 hours, I don't really think about it too much. It's just a painting. I'm just having fun. And when it's done, I don't really think about it too much, whether it's good or bad. It's just a thing I did, and I might just throw it in a drawer. I don't really think about it. Or if I'm just doing like a quick alla prima landscape drawing or painting, I don't really think about it too much. I'm just drawing what I see, and when it's done, if it's cool, it's cool, and I don't really think about it too much. But when I start doing things that are like more cerebral and mapped out, where I've put all the attention to like homework on the front side, and it's just like months, 6, 7, 8 months sometimes
Yeah,
of dialing it in. I'm so stoked because in my heart I can tell it's finally gonna click. It's finally gonna work. And then as soon as it's done and I know it's done, I swear I'll leave that night. I'll just be like, yeah, like did it, right? And the next day I'll look at it and instantly I can see everything wrong with it. Like right away, it's just like, how did I not notice that yesterday? And then all of a sudden, the next day, it's even worse. There's more problems. And then the next day, there's even more problems. And it's just like, man, get this thing out of here. Like, and it's every single painting I've ever done. I don't know what that is either.
so do you not have paintings you look back on that you like? Any of them?
I've never done a painting that I've looked back on and don't see a huge glaring issue with. And sometimes it's like the whole painting,
Right.
where it's like, how did I work on this for 10 months and not see all of these problems? And like almost like not see, I mean, I am problem solving as I go through it. Like obviously there's things that I'll switch speeds in the middle of a painting because it's like, nope, oh, that's not going to work. Um, but but no, it's the amount of problems I can see after it's finished is they end up being the spotlights. So when I look at it, I can just see the problems. It's not that there aren't
Right.
things that I don't appreciate or like, or I have to, I do try to focus on the things that did work and like
Hmm.
and be like, okay, I should replicate that. There's an element of it that's okay. I'll carry that element into the next one, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I mean, so there's always like a forward progress. But I'm always just kind of baffled by the process. It kind of makes me want to not finish work because I feel like I'm
No.
so much happier with it if it's not done. But
Right.
then once I'm finally content with the fact that it's finished, that's where I really start to see all the issues. And I have noticed I find it easier to maybe mitigate those issues on oil painting. It's a lot
Okay.
harder with watercolor
Yeah. Well,
because it's
it's
just
less
like
forgiving.
once it's laid down, and that's mainly what I've been working with for the last like 15 years is watercolor.
Right.
And it's just like, man, once it's on paper, it's on paper. Like it's like you can't just change the tone or glaze over
Yeah.
it or like change. It's just like, man, no, it's just too bright, and I can't. I don't know why I made it that bright. I didn't try to make it that bright, and it's just too. It's too colorful, or it's too this, or it's too dark, or it's too, and there's just no changing it. So I have noticed it's a little more freeing with watercolors or with oil rather to be like, well, I butchered that, but I can redo it.
Yeah.
There's some of that,
Yeah.
more like more
Yeah.
freedom.
And oil paintings feel to me I can keep. I don't want to finish the painting because then I have to work on another painting. And again, I like that. I especially like the last bit of the painting where I'm just doing detail stuff. Like that's the most fun for me.
Yeah,
Um, and then honestly, once the painting's done, I try not to think about it that much. That process doesn't necessarily mean I like it at the end. I just try and pull back a little bit and try and assess whether the whole painting is a good painting and not get too caught up in like um, technically I could have done this better, or the composition is weak in some area that I
right.
didn't notice it was going to be weak on. Um,
Well,
yeah.
I feel like
So
also for like the way I approach it with, I always just kind of use the analogy of chasing the wind, but it's not. It's such a cool feeling chasing the wind. Like I
yeah.
recognize that that's what I'm doing. So as soon as the painting's done, I sign it, hang it, sell it, whatever, look at it. It's like, oh, there's all these issues that I absolutely detest. That's the motivation to redo it. Like that's the motivation to like get back in the ring and like try to do it again because I'm like I should have
Yeah.
done better. Like I should have seen that before I did it. So that's like the motivating force to like try to do it again. Not like the same image or whatever, but just the creative process at all. Like that's the impetus to keep going is that it's just like I love the feeling of thinking you're going to get it right. Even if, it's like getting in the boxing
Mhm.
ring and just getting knocked out every time. It's still enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it. I like it too. I mean, I find it very challenging. All aspects of it is so hard.
It's a desirable difficulty never getting it right. Like
Mhm.
there's something that's like really alluring
Yeah.
about I think what other people perceive as failures. I think a lot of times what people perceive
Yeah.
as failures, I don't even perceive as failures whatsoever. I just think it's a very fulfilling difficulty to have, you know.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so as a final thought, Do you have any, like, this is kind of supposed to be like advice driven, and we probably didn't. I don't know if we did it that well, but do you have any advice
Yeah.
for younger emerging artists? I don't even know if, I mean, maybe younger people are even starting off in the art field with just such a different directive that it's kind of hard for us to. I mean, so my daughter's in art school right now. Erilyn, she's going to UCF, got a scholarship, the whole bit. She's going to be an artist, and I almost don't. I have a hard time giving her advice on what to do because I feel like she's entering such a different world artistically that I'm like, I don't even know if I might only have negative advice. Like, I don't know if I'd have any positive advice. Like, I always give my kids the advice to, like, persevere and push through difficulties and like all of that. But otherwise, I don't know if I can recognize the art world, and what obstacles those guys are gonna face that are.
I mean, I agree, but I think at the core of it, if you're going into the arts, you're in for trouble. Like that's how it's always been. I think it's just a hard. I think 100 years ago, you're trying to be an artist. It's also hard for different reasons. Um,
Right.
so I think
Do you think most of those difficulties are financial?
um, no, but trying to do anything for a job that historically pays terribly is a problem. Like the
Yeah.
you might have to use what you learn in art to do something else that makes money. You might have to go be a concept artist, or you might have to go teach, or you know what I mean. Like that's always,
Right.
high schools are full of art teachers and music teachers that couldn't make a living doing art and music. Um,
Yeah.
so it's just one of those. It's you're it's great that you're an artist, but also prepare for a little bit of a little bit of adversity, like,
How
and
how
again,
much
get
how much
used
do
to.
you think? Go ahead.
I was saying, get used to the idea that use the creativity to supplement what you can't get from what you want to be doing. If I want to be a portrait artist and I can't make a living being a portrait artist, then I have to kind of pivot that into something that, or if I need to build websites to make a little money so that I can do the portrait stuff and not be so dependent on it, then that's what has to happen. Um, being caught up in the fact that you can't do the thing that you want to do is like just a recipe for disaster. So I think that's the, like, do what you need to do the thing that you want to do, and whether or not that's in the best possible scenario is kind of, at a certain point, it's not up to you anymore. And if you have to go work at a tech company and do your painting on the weekends, that sucks, but that might be what you have to do.
Right. Yeah. How much do you think that hurts your natural levels of, like, creativity? Like, how much do you think that stunts the growth of a creative person?
Um, I don't know, probably a lot if you let it.
Yeah.
Like, I think it takes a ton of discipline to do this job, for tattooing or for painting or for whatever. Like, you have to be disciplined on putting the time in and learning the skills that, and you can't put it into this time doesn't necessarily equal this money. Like, that risk reward of the work and the pay don't the relationship is not the same there, like it is in other
Yeah.
things. So, like, you kind of have to detach that a little bit and do what you need to do. And, like, just like for me with exercise, like, I didn't start out as a exercise person, but I realized that I need to do it in order to be healthy, in order to do other things. So you kind of
Yeah.
you have to be on it, and probably that's going to involve either figuring out how to make social media work for you or get off of it and spend some time learning how to paint and, you know,
Right.
trying to fulfill yourself in another way, and not be dependent on something that you don't have control over. I think that's an element of today's world where like we have all these tools that seemingly seem just like an endless possibility to reach people and take video with your phone and do all this stuff, and it's so much easier, and you can record an album in your bedroom, but you don't have control over the majority of that process now. Like you're putting it out there, it's free. What happens at that point is you're on YouTube's dime, you're on Facebook's dime, you're on Instagram's dime. They can do whatever they want with the content, and you have no control. And like we can try and figure out what the computers are doing, but that's kind of a waste of time.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of your only shot. It's like, I mean, you got to be out there to a degree somehow. Someone has to.
Yeah,
Like
and
even if
hopefully
it's
maybe be the person that comes up with a way that works better for artists, or like hopefully there'll be the the idea that we're all just kind of sucking it up and dealing with the status quo, like suffering on Instagram, complaining about it. Like I'm so bored with complaining about Instagram because it's like the I'm participating, I'm doing a thing on their according to their rules, and then I'm complaining about it. But which is
well, so I mean, here's one of the elements to like social media that I think is a common complaint that I find to be a weird dichotomy in people's just the perspective on it
yeah,
is there's a common, I mean, this comes up in conversation at work all the time and actually just at the gym or wherever, but people are like, yeah, the thing that really sucks about social media is that everybody looks like their life is so good, so slick, so like just everybody's got this like perfectly curated, beautiful life with the kids are never sick and the cars never break down and my house is gorgeous and my vacations are only to Fiji and there's all of this like where it's so curated and it's so slick that the pullback to it is like, yeah, it's all BS, man. Like nobody's life is that slick, right? But it's also that thing where as soon as you post anything that's not positive, the pushback is like, man, that guy's being a drama queen. Like, why is he always sulking on Instagram? Why is it always like, poor me, woe is me? So there's kind of like two sides of it, and it's really hard to find a gray area in between,
I mean,
Whereas I think having like longer format conversations like this is really the only way to get that out, where it's like, it is good, it is bad. Like bad things do happen. Things do kind of look good. But it's like a really long-winded conversation to get that point across.
yeah.
Because social media in itself can't do it. It's just too surface level. Like it can't illustrate your pains properly, and it can't really illustrate your wins properly.
Well,
Like
and
it's a very vapid it's a surface level.
and
It's a
what you
surface
see
level.
is based on what you interact with personally. So like what I am
Yes.
seeing is based on what I have clicked on, which is based on whatever my brain, what I see is not necessarily all positive. And, I see like everybody's got a Ferrari, but also here's all this crime and things exploding, because like
Right.
apparently that's what I've clicked on. And like,
You mean like the echo chamber nature of it?
yeah, like there's an aspect where we're all getting served a different experience based on
Yes.
what we are responding to on a level that we're probably not that conscious of.
Well, I was talking to Sarah about this today, where a couple, I don't know, maybe a week ago, it wasn't even that long ago, I like looked at something. I was thinking about building a little pathway in the garden out back, and I just looked up like a concrete, like a not a praver, but yeah, just someone that was laying concrete, and I liked it or clicked on it, and they had like a hashtag for like concrete whatever mason work type thing. I clicked on that, followed a guy, and now my whole feed has just been concrete layers,
Yeah.
and I'm like, like there's like a whole Instagram, there's a whole side of Instagram, like I guess a community of people playing with how to build a sidewalk properly. And there's all these videos like in that ASMR, like they're filmed super
Right.
slick, and it's different kind of troweling knives and different kinds of concrete mixers, and some of them are sponsored by this company and that company, and it's got great audio and it's got all this like camera angles, and you're like, for freaking concrete sidewalks, like really?
Yeah.
And now, and so it's this weird thing of like, I was just kind of interested in it, I clicked on it, now I get all these all this stuff in my feed, and because of that, I've kind of learned a lot about concrete gardening tricks that I wouldn't have known a month ago, right?
I mean, though,
But it
I'm the first one
falls
to
into
say
that
that.
echo chamber thing.
Yeah. I mean, social media is not all bad. I've been doing housework
No.
for a month based on entirely on YouTube videos, on tutorials. So like but there's like we're getting a curated slice of the world based on what we're responding to.
Right. Yeah, and if what you did is look at something negative for just a quick second,
That's what
now
you're
does all of a sudden it just start feeding you this negative,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
you just wanted to follow a guy with a Porsche, and now everything in your feed is Porsches,
Right.
and you can't help but go buy one that you can't afford because you just can't get away from it, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like I just probably my phone's listening, and now I'm going to get all these Porsches in my feed,
I'm gonna get concrete.
and next week my video will be about the Porsche I just bought that I can't afford.
Right.
I'll have you on that edition as well.
Right, cool.
That could be a whole nother topic for us. Well, hey man, I think that was a super good 2-hour rant. So I'm gonna close it off there. Like I think that was great. So thanks for being my second guest.
Anytime.
And
if
nothing else, man, it was super awesome to catch up with you personally. So,
we gotta do it. We gotta
I miss having our hang times, and we 100%. We're gonna come out like 100%. It'll happen. So thanks, man. I'll be in touch. Awesome.
Let's say hi.
Hey, as far as if anybody wants to like track you down, what's the best way?
Just
Instagram,
my website or Instagram, but the website.
What's your website?
AaronNagel.com.
There you go. And what's your Instagram handle?
That's
just
easiest.
At Aaron Nagel.
Aaron Nagel. Yep. Nagel like bagel. Just Nagel. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
All right, bud. Thank you.
All right. See ya.